Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boils and ghouls, creatures of the night everywhere, and welcome back to the Ambassadorial Wing and another installment in the Ultra Retro Review series. And of course, happy Halloween, boo. I am, of course, your host, Ambassador Roderick Usher, or simply the Ambassador. Hope y'all are having a wonderful Tuesday evening. We are back live on the A Wing, the Ambassador Wing, where we talk cinema, modern retro, and ultra retro. We talk streaming. If it's geeky, if it's nerdy, and it's fun, this is the place for you. And tonight, we're jumping into the ultra retro. And this was a request by a good friend of mine. You know him, you love him. He is a regular here on the A Wing. He is a ambassador through and through, Mr. Zacharias J. Usher.
Yeah, the J is very important. Yeah, that was the small detail I fixed. So yeah, it's great to be here, man. I mean, I feel at home here on your channel. I mean, a lot of fun. Yeah, man. As time goes on, I'm starting to feel more and more retro, if you know what I mean.
Well, tonight we're not just retro; we're ultra retro.
Yeah.
So, brand new installment in the Ultra Retro Review series. And tonight we are jumping back to the 1960s, but we're going actually just a touch further back to the 1800s to an adaptation of one of the, I will say, one of the greatest poets slash authors in American literature. The late, the great, the venerated Edgar Allan Poe. And tonight we will be discussing Roger Corman's adaptation of The Fall of the House of Usher, starring also another great of the silver screen, Mr. Vincent Price.
Yeah, well,
and to everyone,
sorry, go ahead.
No, and to everyone watching out there in internet land, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, welcome, one and all. So hope you enjoy the stream. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you don't go mad when you do, and share this out with all of your friends who are fans of good cinema, campy cinema, but awesome cinema. So, Zacharias, my friend, let's jump in.
Well, first of all, I mean, who's better than Roger Corman? I mean, this is one of the all-time great underrated directors of all time. This guy is really is the guy who launched the careers of so many of the great entertainers of not only the previous generation but this one. I mean, we're talking about the guy, a man who Jack Nicholson cried over when he was giving one of his only interviews he ever did. He gave an interview for the Roger Corman documentary and is sitting on the couch fucking crying because when Jack couldn't get a job in Hollywood, Roger Corman gave him a job. So so that's who we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about an overall super talented guy who has been a part of every genre. You know, he directed back in the great Hollywood era with films like this and, you know, similar ones, big, giant budget, old school, old Hollywood movies, and went over into the kind of the indie horror genre. And this guy is just an amazing guy. So as I'm sitting there watching this movie, I mean, some of the shots are so beautifully orchestrated that I'm like, okay, there's Roger Corman doing his thing there.
Yeah, I have to admit, this was a movie I have heard of. Obviously, I am a fan of great literature, so I am a fan of Poe. I mean, I love Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, he wrote some of the greatest works of American literature. I mean, obviously, The Fall of House of Usher, of course, the one that everybody knows him for, The Raven, one of the greatest poems ever written.
Yep.
A personal favorite of mine, a little poem called Annabelle Lee. And, of course, The Cask of Amontillado, Mask of the Red Death, you name it. Poe did it, and he did it better than anybody. And then, of course, you had people come along and say, let's see if we can adapt his stuff for the big screen. And we get this little gem, The Fall of the House of Usher. Great cast, small cast. I mean, 4 people appear in the whole thing. And
right, yeah.
It is atmospheric. It is dark. It is brooding. It is, granted, this is not a particularly long movie. It's only like a shade over an hour and a half.
Yep.
But kind of a slow burn story. And I love this movie. I do. I absolutely love this movie.
Very good. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the film. Yeah, I mean, it is really impressive. And again, it goes to credit a guy like Roger Corman for being
Yes.
able to make something like that entertaining. I mean, again, like you say, I mean, there's one location. I mean, how
Hmm.
impressive is that? And the movie feels big. It doesn't feel like a little teeny movie. It feels like a big movie. Uh,
Well, for a 1960s film, it does feel big, and it feels big, but it's a very claustrophobic, very setting. I mean, you're in this very old, very dilapidated house, and you get the idea that there is a air of decay and rot and just, I mean, you see Vincent Price talking to Mr. Winthrop at one point during the film, and he's talking about this land was once fertile and good and lush and beautiful, and now it has turned into this festering, decaying, dying bog.
right. Well, in some ways, that is kind of a analogy towards the Usher family, right?
Yes.
So you're saying the land itself decay, but you're also saying the members of the Usher family decay, and they
Yeah.
start to allude to some type of I don't know if the word curse comes up, but something along those lines, curse, bad luck. There's something to that family where they've been marked by something.
Well, Roderick talks about it with Winthrop, Philip Winthrop, who is the betrothed to Roderick's sister, Madeline Usher. And he's talking about the family and particular members of the family. You see these very macabre looking portraits. I mean, these
Hmm.
portraits are unsettling. These are portraits of people who did wicked, evil things in their lifetime. And one of the things I think Corman did very well with this was he captured the idea of what Poe was trying to was talk about in this story. Is one of many themes, honestly. Is madness hereditary? And if so, is can madness mark a family and cause it to decline, or in this particular case, fall? And that for me is, when I was watching this the other night, it really struck me what Poe was commenting on, because you have to remember Poe grew up, lived in New England, and
Okay.
was surrounded by, I've done research on Poe and his life because I loved Edgar Allan Poe that much, and I think as an author, as a poet, as a creative, he had a very sad life, he had a very tragic life, and that influenced a lot of his writing. And I think what Corman and the people who worked on adapting the story did was to say, can a family go bad, or can a family be potentially born bad? Because if you look at the people that Roderick describes, you've got murderers, you've got thieves, you've got
Yep.
adulterers, you've got pirates, you've got
Assassins.
assassins, you've got people who commit all sorts of assault. And the paintings themselves very much, I think, depict the blackness of these people's souls.
Yeah. Well, even creepier is
Hmm.
the perception by Roderick of these people.
Hmm.
In some ways, that is the proof that this may be endemic, right? That this really is, as you say, something that was inherited. Because you see him being convinced of kind of a really creepy worldview, uh,
Yeah.
and and you kind of see no effort to break free of that, which is, in my mind, what makes him a really dangerous character.
Yes. I mean, Vincent Price's performance in this movie just
Crushed it.
perfect.
Yep.
Pitch perfect. Absolutely nailed it. Of course, you couldn't expect any less from Vincent Price. I mean, this is a guy who had a long career, had its dips and peaks and so on. I mean, you gotta love Vincent Price. I mean, the man was a great actor. He had a great presence, and he really embodied the character of Roderick Usher, a man who lives under the burden, and you can see, I think honestly you can see the burden weigh on him, not to mention he has his own medical issues and everything, and I think they are real medical issues. I don't think this
Okay.
was anything that was
Interesting.
psychosomatic.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, because I am not 100% convinced of that. I mean, to me, one of the most enjoyable parts about any Vincent Price uh, performance is that I never trust him. I've never trusted this guy. Every character he's played, and we just talked about this last time we discussed a Vincent Price film. I believe it was House on Haunted Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but that character as well. I mean, I just don't trust this motherfucker. And to me, that is what creates a little bit of dynamic energy for him.
Yeah.
He's just got, there's something to this guy where I believe he's keeping secrets. When he does something that's the right thing, I'm even then I'm kind of suspicious of this guy. Yeah.
Well, not to mention, as the story goes along with House of Usher, he buries his own sister alive,
Yep. Yep.
and it causes her to go mad because she suffers from catalepsy. And I was like, is
Well,
that like a
supposedly, yeah, supposedly. I mean, I see, and this is where it gets kind of crazy. Is
Mhm.
I all throughout the film, I was thinking to myself, is Vincent Price poisoning her?
If he was, it would have been Bristol the butler who would have been doing it.
Yep.
And I don't get the impression that Bristol would have gone along with that, even though he's as tied to the family as anyone else. You know, there are cases of people who do suffer from catalepsy where and this is a real medical condition where you appear to almost be dead. Now I think it has a different um title nowadays, but there is a medical condition where your pulse goes almost to the point where it's non-detectable, and your heartbeat can't be detected by anything but the most high by extremely high technology. And back in the old days, obviously they didn't have all of this, and there were cases where people would be literally declared dead, buried alive, and then they would dig themselves out of their own grave. And that's where one of the theories of vampirism came up, because people would literally rise from their grave and everything. If you know the whole
Yeah.
history around Dracula, which we'll be discussing tomorrow night.
Which I've been banned from, by the way,
You've not been
folks.
banned. You have not been banned.
I have been banned.
You have not been banned. That is a complete fabrication. You have not been banned. So try again.
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah, I'm unwilling to watch the what is it, the 1928 Dracula.
you uncultured swine. I never said you were banned. I just
Yeah.
highly encourage you to watch it. It is
Yeah.
not a. Anyway, we're getting off topic here.
All right.
The the whole question is Roderick poisoning her. It would take a extremely depraved mind for a brother to harm his own kin, particularly
Well,
his own sister.
but he's that kind
And
of guy. He to me, he's that kind of guy.
but the question is, does he really believe that his sister is prone to the same madness, to becoming as evil as the rest of his family. I believe that in Roderick's mind, he believes that him and his sister, who are the last of the Ushers, are just as evil as the rest of his family. Now, the one thing I will remark on, I would like to have seen, and I don't know if this actually is a part of the original story. It's been a long time since I've read it. But if this was obviously an adaptation, I would have loved to have seen Madeline in Boston with Winthrop and the rest of their friends,
Yeah.
to see a little bit of her before she returned to Usher Hall. Because I don't get the impression that she is like the rest of her family. She seems like a genuinely decent person. Roderick is what I would call a tortured soul, but he is, I think this torture is self-inflicted. Because as I mentioned before, is evil inheritable?
Well, I have the answer to that.
Sure.
The answer is no. Yeah, the answer is no.
No, and I am in agreement with that. I don't believe evil is hereditary. I believe evil is something that a person chooses to be. Now, we don't know how the rest of the immediate family, the ones that are buried in the family tomb, we don't know if any of them had any particular issues, if they committed crimes, if they were degenerate, because the way Roderick talks about the other family, when the members of the family, the ones that are in those portraits, these are people who chose to do evil, chose to be criminals, who chose to go down a dark path in life. We don't know about the rest of the family, the grandfather, the grandmother, the great grandfather, the great grandmother, the mother, and the father. We only know what Roderick tells us. And as you said, and I agree with
Right.
this, I don't see Roderick as a completely honest actor.
Of
But at the
course.
same time, he may have had this stuff sped food to him from the cradle by his own parents.
Right. Well, I mean, when we get down to, the essential nature of this movie, I mean, what is this movie about? It's a film about control. It's a film about a human being trying to control other people. So the entire character of Roderick is based upon the nature of control, right? And
Yeah.
power.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, I mean, when a guy holds all the cards, it becomes kind of a creepy situation.
Well, and yeah, and you bring that point up, and the question is just how much of Roderick's condition is legitimate and how much of it could be potentially a put on. I have to say it's maybe a 50-50 split, because there are people that can have very tedious constitutions. There are people that can suffer from sensitivity to extreme sound. I'm not saying that that is a complete total put on. It's it's very tedious because you don't know how much of what Roderick is telling Winthrop is legitimate and how much is complete or BS. That's the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust this guy. I mean, even when he says something, like I said, when he's giving some of his most empathetic dialogue, I still there's something behind it. And again, it's a testament to him as an actor. I mean, he's just so
Yes.
superb. Is that who can do a layered character better than Vincent Price? Almost nobody, because I've seen in every film I've seen him in, there are multiple layers to what he's up to in terms of the
Yes.
acting performance. And I would assume that it's not really a casting thing. It's Vincent Price, dude. Even look at him in Edward Scissorhands, where one of his
Hmm.
final roles,
Yeah.
and he has more of a cameo. But even in a cameo part, the guy
Mm.
puts on an incredibly layered performance. I mean, you could call that guy a monster for creating something like Edward,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, there's love there. There's many things. There's the creepy altruistic scientist kind of
Mm-hmm.
mindset there. So this guy, I mean, just creates fucking beautiful characters. And by the way, I did want to say this too, is in my mind, Vincent Price is really the voice of Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, who does Edgar Allan Poe better than Price?
Very few. I mean, I remember it's been a long time ago, but I remember seeing him. I think it was like an episode of Masterpiece Theater or something like that. It was on PBS. I remember that much. And he was doing several readings of Edgar Allan Poe, and he did a reading of The Raven. It was to me, it was the quintessential reading of The Raven. It was
Amazing.
it, the the way Price's voice and you it's it's almost hypnotic. It really is. I would say that Price's voice has a hypnotic quality to it, and in
Mhm.
all the best and in the best ways and everything. And his performance in this movie, Grant, this is one of his few movies I have never seen before. And I am really glad that you recommend it, even though, as you said, it was the wrong movie, but it
Guys,
was.
guys, I picked the wrong film. I was when
There
we
is no
set
wrong
this
film.
up. Well, that's true. As you know, as Uguay said, there are no accidents, right? So yeah.
Mhm.
So I guess I was meant to rewatch The Fall of the House of Usher, and it was pretty good. But I had meant to select the Haunted Palace,
Mhm.
and made that mistake. So I'm sitting there watching this movie. I'm like, this is not the fucking movie that I had meant to watch. Uh, but I mean, this movie has stuck with me over the years, and that really kind of says something about this film. And by the way, I mean Vincent Price. We could go on about Vincent Price, as you know, one of my all-time favorite actors, one of the best.
Mhm.
I mean, one of the best to ever do it. A guy who transcends uh, the eras of Hollywood. I mean, he's a guy whose his old performances are fucking amazing. The few
Mhm.
movies he did as an old man are fucking great.
Mhm.
So he was just he's always killed it. This guy's always killed it. Um, and I wanted to say one last thing is that
Yeah.
Vincent Price does so much with very little. What is so interesting about him as well is the subtlety that he employs in almost every part he does.
My first real exposure to Vincent Price was actually from a film I did an ultra retro review for back last year or earlier this year. Actually, I correct myself, and it was a movie you have never seen,
Which
and
one?
The Ten Commandments.
That's correct. I have not seen that.
Hang your head in shame. And of all the actors you would suspect would be in a biblical epic, Vincent Price would not be one of them. But a, he plays an Egyptian architect by the name of Bacca, and he only has like 3 or 4 scenes in the entire movie before he is killed by Charlton Heston, aka Moses, or Charlton Heston portraying Moses. And every scene he's in, he exudes this creepiness, this kind of sliminess, this corruption.
Is
And
that the film where the you've got the leader with the fucking mask on?
no, I'm talking about the Ten Commandments.
What movie am I thinking of?
I have absolutely no idea.
Hmm. Go ahead, please continue.
But, Vincent Price has long been, honestly, a favorite old school actor. I mean, being someone who grew up in a somewhat um diversified cinematic home where we watched old stuff, where we watched new stuff. That's Kingdom of Heaven,
Yeah,
directed by Ridley Scott.
which I also have not seen.
It is, as a historical movie, it is grossly inaccurate, but as a film, just on its own, it has some really stellar performances. It's got a very good cast. It's got Orlando Bloom. You've got Brendan Gleeson. You've got, oh goodness, Eva Green. Let's see. You've also got oh, for heaven's sakes, I'm drawing a blank.
So far, so good.
Um,
I like
like I
what I'm
said,
hearing.
and like I said, in terms of a historically accurate film, Kingdom of Heaven, in a lot of ways, is not. Oh, Liam Neeson also has a part in it. David Thewlis as well.
Oh,
Uh, so
speaking my fucking language, David Thewlis. Oh my God, who's better than him? Brendan
yeah,
Gleeson, one of the best. I mean, just amazing.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
know,
and
as you know, I love the character actors. I love them. I mean, they are
yeah.
really, really my favorite.
So,
Yeah.
and I do want to say hello to the chat, Sci-Fi Nation and Ace Smolik. Good to see you, fellas. And Sci-Fi Nation, do not feel bad. This is a 1960s film. It is a really old film, but it is honestly. I think I've seen a clip of it once upon a time long ago before I watched it the other night for this. Um, I for those of you that are watching this, and I will leave this link in the chat after the review is over. If you have never seen this film or you haven't seen it in a long time, there is a link to the movie and it is free on YouTube. And you can thank Zacharias here for bringing that up. No, Sci Fi Nation, not Jackie Gleason, Brendan Gleeson. Different actor entirely.
Yep. Yep. And what's his son's name?
I honestly don't know.
Well, his son is the guy who plays Hux in Star Wars. So there you go.
Oh, Donald.
Dom Hall.
Donald Gleason. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Sci-fi, it's good to see you too, bud. I'm doing fine. Cannot complain. And by the way, happy Halloween. Boo. But back to House of Usher. The thing I appreciate about this movie is, it seems a bit melodramatic, but at the same time, I think that was intentional, considering Poe's style of writing. His style of writing at times was very melodramatic, but in the right context, that type of writing style can have its place.
Yeah, well, I mean, you basically saw like the early form of jump scares in this movie, and there's a bunch of them. None of them scared me. All right, people, none of them got me. But I mean, they tried. So you saw a bunch of these goofy, kind of old school jump scares with a skeleton coming at you, or a rail. One of them was the rail on the staircase fell through. So
Well,
the
and
the chandelier drop. That's a classic one. So yeah. I mean, there's tropes in the film, and I think in some ways it kind of gives it a little bit of character.
it does. And the house itself is almost a character in and of
Yeah.
itself in this
Yep.
movie. So, um, the thing,
Well,
being we,
by the way, Event Horizon, fucking great movie. So
well,
Sci-Fi Nation knows what he's talking about.
yeah. Hey,
Fucking
sci-fi. I don't know if he's free and everything, but this guy right here, he'd be a good guest or anything to have on for that review. Um, 5 p.m. Eastern. I will still be at work, sci-fi, unfortunately, but I will at least try and pop into the chat and everything when I get home. So, but you know, I couldn't help. I couldn't help but flashback to when we did our review of House on Haunted Hill last year,
yeah.
and you mentioned the chandelier dropping, and when I saw
Yep.
that, and I was like, wait a minute, is Roger Corman copying a little bit of William Castle here because wait a minute, you've got Vincent Price in a creepy old house, and you've got a chandelier falling, and I'm like, wait a minute. Is Roger, like I said, is Roger Corman paying a little bit of an homage to William Castle, who directed the original House on Haunted Hill? And I was like, I can't say I disapprove. But the other thing that came to mind was looking at the set of the house, the second floor hallway. Does that not give you a bit of a feel from the from House on High Hill, the second floor main hallway as well?
Yeah, well, the whole and see, it's like I confused this film because all
Mm-hmm.
of the Vincent Price films, kind of to me, in my own brain, are a fucked up, confused amalgamation of each other. I mean, they all blend together for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, there are definitely similarities. I mean, the characters that Vincent Price plays in these old Gothic horror films
Mm-hmm.
are all very similar. He always plays a guy in a position of power.
Yep.
He always plays a guy who's got he's got his poker hand. He's not showing us.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So yeah, there are some similarities. But I mean, there's so many good ones, man. I mean, the thing about movies like this
Mm-hmm.
is I wish we got to see stuff like this nowadays. It's like I love Crimson Peak by Guillermo del Toro, which is a throwback to this kind of thing. And I mean, you'll watch like Last Man on Earth, which is a great fucking movie, or The Haunted
Mm-hmm.
Palace, or this, or House on Haunted Hill, or any of these Vincent Price films.
Well, and don't
There's
forget. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zach. Go ahead.
Well, which one should I not forget?
Um, well, remember also Vincent Price was in adaptations for an adaptation of two other Poe works, The Mask of the Red Death and The
Yep.
Pit and the Pendulum.
Pit and Pendulum's pretty good.
Yeah.
But all of his are good. All of those old school horror ones, House of Wax. Uh,
Yes.
there's
Mm-hmm.
just so many. There's so many. House on or not The Haunted Palace, which we
Mm-hmm.
we should probably do at some point because
Sure.
I fucking love that movie. And there's a scene in The Haunted Palace where the female character goes outside
Mm-hmm.
and she's in the courtyard, and what you hear is you hear the wind blowing,
Mm-hmm.
and slowly that wind becomes the sound of screaming. So there's
Mm-hmm.
so many cool little details in films like this, and I love the gothic horror genre. And
Yeah, honestly, I as I mentioned, I grew up watching a lot of these older movies, watching a lot of these more atmospheric, more um what would be considered nowadays cheesy or corny, but back in the day, this was what scared the ever loving crap out of people. And, considering the source material, which is, of course, Edgar Allan Poe, that man knew how to scare the ever loving crap out of you, but by only putting words on a page. And I think what Roger Corman did, I think successfully, particularly with this movie, is to take the words off of the page and adapt it into a movie that maybe for us nowadays wouldn't scare us per se, but definitely make us think.
well, as you know, as a writer, I
Hmm.
am inspired by this particular genre. There's something beautiful about the genre itself. And included in the genre is always a twisted, fucked up love story, which obviously is featured in this movie as well. So these films really are kind of the underbelly of um, relationships in some ways. I mean, there's always a guy who is there, and a woman, and there's there's something about these relationships, and this is like
Mm-hmm.
a through line through the genre, where
Mm-hmm.
there is something that needs to be overcome for that to happen. And in this film, I mean, and in other films like this, you always see the main character having to kind of go through hell to, but he does it for love, right? He does it for
Yes.
love.
Yeah.
Our guy, he loves Madeline
Yeah.
in this
Philip.
film.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, and that's the great thing about, you know, Poe himself. As I mentioned, he had a very tragic life. He had a very hard life. As I was doing my research on him, and my mother ambassador being the extraordinary woman that she is, many, many years ago, she found me an old copy is the complete works of Poe. And
very cool.
yeah, the complete works of Poe. It's not a particularly big book, but anything
Well,
in
well,
terms of
and
size.
that's when you knew she was a keeper.
Well, I'm talking about Mother Ambassador, not Madam Ambassador.
Oh, okay,
My
gotcha.
mom. My mom.
Yep. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, Mom knew that I loved old literature. She knew I loved the older authors and so on. And she found this book just for like $5. And I'm like, I love my mom. And
Very sweet. Yeah, very sweet.
yeah. But one of the interesting facts about Poe was, and this, remember the context of the era in which Poe lived. This was the 1800s. He was actually in love with like I think it was his second or third cousin, and they actually ended up marrying. But unfortunately, she died very young and everything. They weren't married for very long. And you see this as, I think in particular in House of Usher, as a thread or a callback to his own personal life, because you see the love story between Madeline and Winthrop, and they are both very much in love. And again, I would have loved to have seen at least one scene or so of them in Boston and seen
Yeah,
maybe a little more of that love story.
dude. I mean, that's one of the best points you've brought up in the stream.
So, so
You've brought up many, but I really like that idea. Yeah, I think that's probably a budgetary problem.
it probably was. And Roger Corman, he did a lot of lower budget films, but he knew how to stretch a small budget, and he did it successfully. I mean, if you look at House of Usher, there was one scene in particular, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
Sure.
It was after Madeline's funeral, and Winthrop has gone up to his room on this and everything, and he has that really trippy dream where everything is like in shades of blue and red, and he's having hallucinations
With the
about the other,
smoke, and you had
the
smoke, and
smoke, and he and
yeah.
he's having he's seeing visions of the other members of the Usher family, and Roderick is
Mm.
there, and they're all. What were your thoughts on that particular sequence? How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, it's a weird one. I think that's one of the most ambiguous scenes in the film. You could interpret that many ways. I mean, it could be just a dream, right? Which is the
Mm-hmm.
simplest answer to that. But it could also be something deeper than that, and it could be something more real than that, which is where kind of the psychological horror of the film comes into play. It's like you said, the house is really, the fifth character in the film, or the
Yes.
fourth character. So it's like even when even when Philip is about to be burned by the pot, and he's talking about, I'm taking Madeline back to Boston. The
Mm-hmm.
house is like, no, you're not, motherfucker.
No.
So yeah, it's creepy, but to me, I mean, psychological horror has always been more interesting to me than something like Saw or Texas Chainsaw.
Personally, I never, okay. Being an 80s kid, being a teen in the 90s, I grew up watching what would be considered the great slasher films. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. I never cared for Freddy. Freddy was pardon my French, a pussy compared to Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees.
Oh,
Now, don't
Oh,
get me
you
wrong. Now, don't get me wrong. I do not have a personal beef against Robert Englund as an actor.
no,
He has. I like him as
no.
an actor. What?
Nightmare on Elm Street 1, you've got a badass fucking villain. So you can take the
Okay.
sequels, you take the
Um.
sequels, whatever you want. The first Nightmare on Elm Street is a
Okay.
fucking superb film. When Freddy walks through the bars in the jail and just kind of looks up at the guy, what the fuck? Very creepy character when he just cuts off his fingers.
Mhm.
No, no. Freddy number one in the first film is a fucking tremendous guy. They fucked it up with the sequels.
Fair enough. Personally, I don't like a guy that's going to go after you in your dreams. That for me is a wuss out move. I rather you're going to come after me. You come after me while I'm awake. But that's just me.
It's I mean we've both had some, I guess, religious experience. We understand kind of the
Mhm.
deeper meanings. I
Yes.
I like examining films sometimes and kind of drawing deeper shit from them, like we are
Mhm.
doing right now with House of Usher.
Yeah.
The Freddy Krueger story is really the story of demonic possession. Is really what that story
I
is all
will
about.
I will agree with that.
So
Yes.
so so it's a like they tell us about demons. It is
Mhm.
an invisible force that
Yes.
doesn't have power unless you give it to them. So that's kind of what that whole thing is about. It's a story about fear. So I fucking love Freddy Krueger, man. I love those movies.
Yeah, and again, I like my killers and anything. You gonna come after me? You come after me while I'm awake.
You
That
know what? I'll even take it a step further. I don't give a fuck. I even like the Nightmare on Elm Street 5. I don't care. I don't
you
care.
know, just for me, Jason and Michael, they just had an air to them that these guys were practically immortal, and so was Freddy. Essentially, it was next to impossible to kill him and
Yep.
everything. And I thought that was kind of the cool thing. Now, I will say this: Robert Englund in Freddy versus Jason, that performance I like. That performance I absolutely love
Yeah.
because I loved Freddy versus Jason. I really did.
Yep. Well, Robert England is another one of those guys.
Mhm.
For everybody watching here, when I had Ambassador over on Top Shelf TV, we were talking about character actors, our
Yeah.
love for character actors. Robert
Yes.
England is another one of those guys who is so underrated that it
Yes.
drives me fucking crazy. Drives me
He is.
fucking crazy. He's done so many great little bit parts, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, like they did in Stranger Things, they always put something on his face. They make him look all fucked up. He always plays a monster. Let the fucking guy act. Give him some real fucking dialogue. Let him play a great part. Because I'll tell you what, I would bet every dollar I have this guy can do it.
There is actually, you're going to love this. There is an episode, I think it's in the third season of Babylon 5, that Robert Englund makes an appearance.
And I bet
He
you, I bet he fucking crushed
and
it.
he I'll send you, I'll send you the link to his scenes from that particular episode. I would get a copyright strike in 10 seconds from Warner Brothers, so I can't do it here, but I will send you the link and I'll let you judge for yourself. A lot of people say that's one of his best parts, and it's actually one of the best episodes. J. Michael Straczynski was like, I don't know the rationale. I don't know why he called in Robert Englund, but everybody says they love that episode in particular because Robert Englund is in it.
Yeah,
And
well,
his
I'm very
character,
happy to hear that. Yeah,
yeah,
but is it one of his best performances, or is it one of his only opportunities? See, that's the problem I have.
yeah, and I get that too. But I will say,
Well, you and I have
upon,
collaborated on scripts before,
yes, we
right?
have
We've worked on probably two or three of them, and
at least. Hmm.
I would hire Robert England in a fucking heartbeat. In a
I would
fucking
too.
heartbeat.
If I was casting something, I would be like, yeah, I would definitely I would put him on my cast list because
Yeah,
even though I don't particularly care for him as Freddy Krueger, I will acknowledge his ability as an actor. We talked about this also, not to get way off on topic, but he was in that one 80s miniseries I showed you the trailer for not too long
yep,
ago, V.
yep.
He was his character was a little bit goofier, a little bit sillier, but very very endearing. It was one of the few times in England's career where he wasn't playing a monster, where he wasn't playing someone who was mad. He was playing an alien, and he did a good job. He really honestly did. He did a very solid job in his role as oh, what was the name? Shoot, I can't remember the name of his character off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. But either way, England was great in V. He really was.
He's great in
Um,
everything. Have you seen New Nightmare?
I did, and I really now I will say this: I did enjoy New Nightmare. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember it. I remember it relatively well, and it was a nice callback. It was a nice, having Wes Craven in there, having the actress who played what was it, Karen or Carrie or something like that.
Yep, yep.
Who play- So, um,
But he played himself,
yeah.
right? Essentially, and he
Hmm.
played a version of himself who was going into madness, right? I,
Hmm.
I mean, we can leave it there, but this guy's a phenomenal fucking actor, and guys
Yeah.
like him just don't get the fucking credit. They don't get the fucking parts, even though they're really good. It's like Tony Todd. I mean, think of all the things he's done.
Yeah.
Uh,
Love Tony Todd. I do. He was one of my
anyway,
favorite. Um, I'll say this briefly, and we can get back on topic. One of the first times I saw Tony Todd in anything was it was, I think it was the late '80s remake of Night of the Living Dead,
oh,
where
he's
him, Patricia Tallman, absolutely awesome, and not to mention Patricia Tallman. She played a reoccurring character also on Babylon 5, Lita Alexander. Great character, had a great arc. Just unfortunately, we never got to see how her character, the how her character rounded out. But we do find out in some of the books that they did that were tied to B5 exactly what happened to her particular
well.
character.
I did watch the first episode of Babylon 5. I think I told you that. It
I think
just
you
is.
mentioned, yeah,
It is so intimidating because it's taken you
it's
two years to review this series. So it's like, oh god,
Zach. It is B5 and Crusade and doing all the movies and all the character studies and everything else I have done. For me, it's a passion project,
who's
and
that?
I've
Who's that older Mexican guy who plays like an admiral or something? What's his name? You know who I'm talking about?
Are you talking about Edward James Olmos? And you're thinking
Yes,
of,
yes, I am.
you're thinking of the reboot of Battlestar Galactica from the early 2000s, not
Oh,
Babylon
okay.
5.
All right,
Wrong series, my friend.
but
Wrong series.
but another fucking tremendous guy, and nobody hires this poor guy. Nobody hires him. I would.
Well, I won't say nobody hires him. He had a cameo appearance in Blade Runner 2049 as his original character from the first Blade Runner film. But I have not seen him in anything except for the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, in a very long time.
He was in Dexter.
Was he? Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
He played the Doomsday Killer. Right, he played a serial killer. He was really good, and
Mhm.
and he's always really good. But again, the character actors don't get the treatment they deserve. Time for a segue. Let me hit the segue here. Vincent Price, also a character actor, never really got what he deserved. When they interviewed his daughter, or
Mhm.
it was either his daughter or his wife, and
Mhm.
they were talking about Vincent Price, and Vincent Price, whoever this family member was, said that he was so touched and moved by the fact that Tim Burton had hired him to do
Yes.
the creator. Like he was moved by that because here's a guy who deserved that credit and yet was kind of forgotten as
Well,
time went on. Yeah,
well, this is something that I discussed back last year when I did my stream about the old 1930s, 1940s Universal monster movies, one of which we're going to be discussing tomorrow night. All those actors like Karloff, like Bill Lugosi, like Vincent Price, like Lon Chaney Jr. and Lon Chaney Sr., you know, Elsa Lancaster, you know, all of those people that, Claude Rains, who portrayed the Invisible Man, who also was in a adaptation of the Phantom of the Opera,
yeah.
was,
It's like if it weren't for guys with good taste like Peter Jackson and George Lucas,
mhm.
Christopher Lee would fall into that same fucking category. Who hired him
and,
other
Pe-
than
and
those two?
and Peter Cushing. Don't forget
Fucking
Peter Cushing.
another one. Yeah,
There's an account I follow on Twitter, and it's about the Hammer films, and there's actually a picture of Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. I think it was one of the last pictures that was ever taken of Peter Cushing, and they're standing in the doorway, I think, of Peter Cushing's home.
I've seen that
And
picture.
I think I may have I know I retweeted it, and I think I may have tagged you in it. But these guys, these actors, and these
Fucking
actresses,
heartbreaking to see that picture. Yeah.
because they're both gone now. I mean, granted, Peter Cushing's been gone a long time. I mean, obviously, but
Well,
Christopher Lee,
but even you look at their interviews, you can feel that fucking love between these two actors as
yeah,
professionals who admired each other and fucking
yeah.
grew together as actors. And
Mhm.
to me, that's kind of sad. I mean, it really is. You could tell, even though Chris Lee is a very composed man,
Yes.
you can feel that from him, and you can feel that from Peter. So it's like Peter O'Toole and Richard Harris. I
Yes.
mean, that's a lifelong bond that could never be broken, even by death. You listen to
You
the
know.
interviews;
Mhm.
it's still there, uh, even though they're gone. If that makes sense.
No, yeah, it makes it total sense. I mean, the only thing I could think would be equivalent to it, and this is two actors I think we both have a great appreciation for, is of course Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah,
I mean,
exactly the
particularly,
same thing. Yeah.
their work together. I mean, they've obviously acted in a lot of stage productions for Shakespeare over in England, and obviously two of their two roles that they are iconic for is, of course, Eric Lyncher, aka Magneto, of course, Professor Charles Xavier from the X-Men films by with Bryan Singer. Those two, when those two go, people around the world are going to be absolutely crushed. I mean, the last time I remember an outpouring of sympathy and appreciation for an actor like that was when Leonard Nimoy passed,
Oh,
and
very hard.
that was years and years ago. And,
I mean,
I
but
don't.
see, it's like if these guys leave a lasting impression on me or you or anyone else as a audience member,
Yeah.
it just goes to credit how powerful they were as performers. It's like
Yes.
I could listen to a Leonard Nimoy interview,
Hmm.
and if it hits me at the right time, I may cry.
Hmm.
So it's like these guys still live on.
Yeah.
It, it
After they're gone. Yeah.
of course, yeah, somebody like Leonard, because Leonard represented more than just the character of Spock.
Yes, he
And
did.
by the way, another forgotten character actor who I would have loved to have seen in more parts, but
Hmm.
he represented, I think, I mean, not to get too sentimental here, but he kind of represented human goodness,
Yes, he
and
did.
that came through his character, and that was what his character was based on. But him as a man represented that same thing, and to me, that's more touching. And
Yes.
so just who he was, his central character, there was just a persona of kindness there, and it was really touching. And I mean, what a fucking cool guy, man.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of segue back to House of Usher, you get the impression that the character of Philip Winthrop, he doesn't buy that goodness. He's very he's very loving, he's very compassionate, he cares for Madeline deeply. He loves her, he wants to marry her, he wants to have a home and a family with her.
Yep.
And you have that contrast of Philip compared to Roderick, where Roderick is nothing but obsessed with this curse, that this perceived curse upon his family, and Philip is like, no. He pushes back on Roderick and says, no, a family or your sister in particular are not inherently evil. They are not inherently bad.
Yeah.
And I will say this of the character of Winthrop. He he really delivered for me the idea of unenduring, unrelenting, but unrelenting in the best possible way, love.
Yeah, he was a good guy, man. And but I described the film as a film, about control. But in other
Yes.
ways, you could also describe this film as a rescue mission,
Yeah.
which is kind of what this whole thing was all about.
Hmm.
Which draws other interesting, conclusions about, is your family always the best thing for you? Perhaps not. It depends on the situation. So he was a righteous character, right? And
Yes.
and
I
and
would say
what
that's a good word for him. Yeah.
and what defeated him as a man was the house and the situation itself.
Yeah. And can evil be overcome?
Yeah.
Yes, it can.
Hmm.
When a good man refuses to give up, when a good man refuses to quit. Now, does ultimately does the Usher family, is it destroyed? Yes, it is. But I think going forward, and this is just a purely hypothetical, I think Philip Winthrop, he will take this experience with him going forward, and if he had a life, obviously he would have had a life after the events of him meeting the Usher family. He would have dedicated his life to whoever he ended up being with, whoever was his spouse, whoever was his wife. He would have shown the same love and care and compassion and unrelentingness in that relationship as much as he did for Madeline.
Yeah, well, that's interesting to me as well. I mean, you speculate about that, and
Yeah.
my speculation is a little bit different, which
Okay.
this may get interesting. I see him as being claimed by the house. Okay, that the house defeated him. Like I said, in my mind, at least during the film, the house broke this guy down to such a strong degree that
Hmm.
I don't really think he can recover. And I think let's say we ask Edgar what his vision is for after the character is through.
Hmm.
Uh, it would not surprise me if he like hung himself or shot himself.
And that's entirely a possibility too. I mean, considering the style of Poe's writing, Winthrop may have, as you said, been broken by the house. But the question is his will and his spirit stronger than what the house did to him? Can his spirit recover from what happened to him in that house?
Yeah, it's a good question for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not.
well, and that's the great thing about a lot of Poe's writing. The stories oftentimes do end on an ambiguous note. They end on somewhat of a cliffhanger. Granted, the cliffhanger is never um, explored further, but that's the strength of Poe's writing. Is he leaves the audience wanting more, and that's what a good author does. I mean, obviously, none of his stories ever do have a sequel, never have a follow through from from after the initial event, but it leaves room for you to speculate. It leaves room for you to discuss, and oftentimes that's what people did back in the old days. They would read a story and they would probably sit around their home and they would debate it.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
it's like Empire Strikes Back, was
Hmm.
Darth Vader lying? That was a big conversation back
That
in the
was
day.
the. It was. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember asking, because I was only 2 years old when Empire released in theaters, and I asked Mother Ambassador because her and Dad went and saw Empire in theaters back in the day.
Yep.
And I asked her, I was like, "Well, did you and Dad ever discuss it? Was Vader lying to Luke?" And she's like, "Yeah, we talked about it." She's like, "Not to the length that you and your friends do nowadays." Yeah. But she's like, "Yeah, we talked about it." And I was like, "Well, what did you and Dad think?" She's like, "We were kind of on the fence. We didn't know exactly whether Vader was lying or not." But that was the great thing about a good cliffhanger. You
Well,
don't know.
I have a curveball for
Okay.
this show. So
Okay.
I am going to send you a link to something. I hope we can play it here.
Okay. I'll pull up my Twitter. Give me a second.
So as you
But
know, I mean, when have I ever not come to this show with a
prepa-
curveball in hand?
prepared. Yeah.
Yep.
You often do. And they're often entertaining.
So
So
here we go. I think you're going to be impressed by this. All right. So if we can, let's put this on.
oh,
If you want to do the whole thing, feel free. If you want to do half, up to
how
you.
how long question, how long is it? Because I'm not
Uh,
entirely I honestly don't
it's,
know.
it's like
I've never seen this. Oh,
15
15 minutes.
minutes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we can probably do the whole thing.
So should I introduce? Should I introduce what it is?
Oh, dude.
Oh, there we go. So
Dude.
let me
Dude, you get
give a
you.
little
Yeah.
context. So being a fan of the film itself from 1960, I happened to discover the Christopher Lee version of the film, which is a 15-minute short film. One of the last things that Mr. Lee ever did. So let's take a look, man.
All right, give me this a minute. Share screen. Definitely got to share the audio on this. That's half the fun. Wow. Let's see. Down there it is.
So
Okay. Yeah.
Christopher Lee is playing Philip. Okay. Which by the way
Oh,
is a little
wow.
bit surprising because I had expected him to play Usher, but he's not. So
Mhm.
by the way, this unfolds totally different than the film. It's a totally different take on the story, so it's pretty interesting, man.
Mhm. Okay. Here we go. All right. Well, considering this is Poe, I don't think we'll get any copyright issues because it's pretty much public domain at this point. I
Yeah,
think
it
all
is.
Poe's
Yeah.
work is. So we
Yep.
should be in the clear. All right.
Let's go full screen with that.
Okay. I got you. There we go.
Yep. Yep. Narrated by Sir Christopher Lee.
He earned it. From a story by Edgar Allen Poe. Mm.
It was a magical place that filled my childhood with visions to stir the imagination.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And now, during the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of another year, I was alone, passing through a singularly dreary tract of country, and at length found myself within reach of the melancholy house of Usher. I know not how it was, but with my first glimpse of the house after so long, unexpected sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. What was it? What unnerved me so in the contemplation of the house of Usher? Its proprietor, Roderick Usher, had been one of my boon companions in boyhood. But many years had elapsed since our last meeting. His letter, however, had lately reached me in a distant part of the country. I scanned more narrowly the real aspect of the building. Its principal feature seems to be that of an excessive antiquity. The writer spoke of acute bodily illness, of a mental disorder which oppressed him and brought an earnest desire to see me as his best and indeed his only personal friend in an attempt to alleviate some of his malady, and I accordingly obeyed forthwith what I still considered a very singular and haunting summons. I gazed upon him with a feeling half of pity, half of awe. Frederick, my dear friend, I have, after all this time, been waiting for your arrival. I at first thought it to be an overdone cordiality. It was with difficulty that I could bring myself to admit the identity of the man being before me with the companion of my early boyhood. He entered into what he conceived to be the nature of his malady. The most insipid food was alone endurable. The odors of all flowers proved oppressive. His eyes were tortured by even a faint light. And there were but peculiar sounds which inspired him with horror.
Somewhat reminiscent of the dream sequence, that particular scene there.
I began to question my worthiness of being present for my friend, who now existed in a world of which I held no key. I shall perish. I dread the events of the future. I feel that the period will...
You're on mute, my friend. You're on mute, my friend.
Sorry, I had my mic and YouTube StreamYard muted.
It happens.
I love this animation style. It is gorgeous. It is enrapturing.
It is.
I love the fact that they model Roderick, the character design after Lee. I love this.
Yeah, well, here's
It's
the interesting thing is I trust this Usher far more than I trust Vincent Price. This guy,
Yeah.
I actually believe him. I have believed every word he said so far. So
Yeah. Well, and not to mention, you said this is from the perspective of Winthrop, and the fact that there is a tie between Winthrop and Usher. It's not just the fact that they were complete strangers. They build.
well, it's an interpretation, right? It's so,
Yeah. Hmm.
which to me is kind of fascinating. I mean, it's like you've got the source material, like you mentioned, the Edgar Allan Poe source material, but to me, what is so powerful is you can have totally different fucking this story is totally different than the film
This.
we have been reviewing.
Yeah. And but I'm so glad you sent me this. This is probably one of the best things you sent. No, I mean that. This is probably one of the best
Well,
things you
and
sent.
by the way, I mean Chris Lee's narration and his little part he's doing is fucking. I mean, come on,
Perfect. Perfect.
superb.
Perfect. Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah,
All right.
well, you mentioned Price doing readings of Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, Chris Lee may be a competitor in that regard.
Pretty darn good so far. So, all right. Carrying on.
Sooner or later arrive when I must abandon life and reason together in some struggle with the grim phantasm. Fear. But what do you fear, Roderick? I must know what is it that torments your every moment. I admit that much of the peculiar gloom which afflicts me could be traced to a severe and long-continued illness. I speak of my tenderly beloved sister, Madeleine, my sole companion for so many long years, my last and only relative on earth. Roderick spoke with such bitterness which made me shudder. And yet, I could tell of his complete devotion towards his sister.
Pause it.
Madeline.
Yeah.
So in this version, we see an Usher, like Chris Lee says, who is completely devoted to Madeline. I got the sense in the film, the 1960 Vincent Price film, that he was a power hungry control freak. So this was not my interpretation of Vincent Price's portrayal. So to me, again, it's interesting to see different takes on the source material. This version has a purely good, a neutral good portrayal of the Roderick Usher character. Yeah.
And, there's often a play on words or a thematic um, feel to what the names that Poe would give to his characters. Madeline sounds almost like maudlin, which is a very old term, but it deals with different types of illness or sickness or what have you. Roderick is a very forceful, very overpowering name. I mean, you compare it to
Yeah.
and Poe did this.
And Philip is kind of a neutral name. That's
Yes.
not a power name. It's not a weak
Mm-mm.
name. It's just kind of it's Philip is
It's in the
us, right?
yeah. Philip is Philip
The
is
audience.
he is the POV character. He is the character by
Mhm.
which we see all the events take place. So, all right, carrying
I
on.
do have a joke. I do have a joke.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So she's a 10, but her brother is a Vincent Price character. which which was my thought throughout the entire film. I mean, she's gorgeous, but her brother just happens to be a creepy Vincent Price character. So anyway,
The actress was very lovely. That played Madeline. Yes.
absolutely.
All right.
Will leave me as the last of the ancient race of the Ushers.
But Vincent Price is a deal breaker. Yeah, the brother, I can't deal with that.
Even in her youth, Madeline would fear the outside world. Roderick loved his sister for her purity, but the foreboding dooms forever present. The Usher's life of loneliness will mean there will be no heir.
Ah, shoot.
But on the closing in of the evening of my arrival at the
Well, taken down.
What's happening to it?
Stream unavailable. Stream suspended for policy violation.
What?
Yep. Of course. Well, we are still live on Twitter and
Son of a
Facebook. We're going
bitch.
to continue. Ain't your fault. You couldn't know. So we're still live on. You know what?
I fucking hate YouTube. Fuck you,
Yeah.
Susan.
Well, here's the thing. We're still live on Facebook and Twitter. We're going to continue on. So
Son
screw
of
it.
a mother.
Well, here's the thing. I can edit this and I'll re-upload it and I'll get around them. I can always get around them because I want to finish
All
this
right.
because this is
Well, that's that. That's that. So
they can
all right.
I want to finish it
She
because I'm loving
succumbed
this.
to the prostrating power destroyer.
Screw you, YouTube.
Can you pause it real quick? I've got a rant.
Okay, rant.
Okay, listen. What the fuck are you people doing? Supervising and knocking out streams of small YouTubers, you fucking mutts. You mutts. See, this is not even a human interaction. We're dealing with a fucking computer algorithm. You fucking mutts. Back in the day, it used to be very competitive. You could easily win on YouTube if you were doing the right thing. And by the way, we would see this man here, who is in charge of this channel, doing far better. And by the way, myself too. I mean, I'm an old school guy in terms of YouTube in certain ways. I was around before the adpocalypse. So I've seen the old, I've seen the new. Listen, man, I fucking hate what YouTube has become in a lot of ways. Them striking down this stream is just another example of that.
It's okay. That's okay. Like I said, I'll just upload it or download it from StreamYard. I'll edit out the and I'll just I'll work around.
Well. I mean, just to give you a small piece of advice, being the I don't know person I am. So here's the title of the video is YouTube removed this stream. Right. That's your title.
It ain't the first time this is happening.
And put us full screen.
Okay, hang on. Let me.
So YouTube took this stream down! Exclamation point! And we'll give you a little thumbnail here. So what I want you to do is look surprised. There's your thumbnail.
All right. I want to let's get back to this because I'm screw
sorry.
YouTube.
Sorry. Fuck
Screw
you, YouTube.
YouTube, kiss my taint. Up your bum. Up your bum, YouTube.
Up your bum. Yeah. Fuck you, YouTubes. And by the way, I name names. Susan, you fucking mutt.
Susan Talentless Hack Wojcicki.
Pause it one more time. I got one last thing. The reason they picked Susan Wojcicki is because, and that mispronunciation was on purpose. They picked her because nobody could fucking say her name. And I'm not I'm kidding, but barely. They picked her because she's got one of the most fucked up names of all time. So it's like you want to talk about her, you've got to. I mean, you've got to look up an interview with her. This lady is a shadow. This lady is a ghost. Take a look at what she did with H3H3, and that'll tell you all you need to know. Anyway,
Gotcha. All right.
Madeline has died. She has left me. At the request of Roderick Usher, I personally aided him in the arrangements for a temporary entombment.
Oh boy.
pause.
Yeah.
Okay, so that scene of him grieving her death could not have been more different from the film we saw. So
Mhm.
when this happened in the film that we just were talking about, you
Mhm.
saw an almost detached Roderick. So in this version, he's literally at her bedside, draped over her corpse. In the
Mhm.
film, he's standing distant from the body. He's looking out the window. He's distant. He's detached. So in my mind, that is the major one of the major differences between these two concepts. It's like Stephen King does his speeches. He shits on Stanley Kubrick. And one of the things Stephen King says about the difference between his Shining and Kubrick's is that in Kubrick's version, the hotel freezes. In King's version, the hotel burns. The difference between warmth and cold. That's kind of what we're seeing right here.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that
And now,
shot transition.
some days of bitter grief having elapsed, an observable change came over the features of the mental disorder of my friend. At times, again, I was obliged to resolve all into the mere inexplicable vagaries of madness.
I love the transitions in this.
Yeah, really good.
Of course, that's what you can do with animation that you can't always do with live action.
Well, I mean, they gave Roger Corman a shitty budget, so
Yeah.
For I beheld him gazing upon vacancy for long hours, in an attitude of the profoundest attention, as if listening to some imaginary sound.
mm.
Oh. Madeline.
It was no wonder that his terrifying condition was creeping upon me. The wild influence of his fantastic yet impressive superstitions. And you have not seen it? Then you shall. Must behold this. I hear it and have heard it. We have put her living
Oh my gosh.
I now tell you that I heard the first feeble movements in the hollow coffin. I heard them many, many days ago. Yet I dare not speak. The rending of her coffin and the grating of the iron hinges of her prison, and her struggles within the coppered archway of the vault. Be calm. It is the storm that draws breath, playing tricks on us both.
Mister.
Is she not hurrying to upbraid me for my haste? Have I not heard her footsteps on the stairs? Do I not distinguish that heavy and horrible beating of her heart? Edmund! Edmund! I tell you that she now stands without the door!
Oh my word.
The vision before me will stay
Whoa.
burnt into my very soul and haunt me to the end of my days. Where I gazed, the house once stood. I saw the mighty walls rushing, as under there was a long, tumultuous shouting sound, like the voice of 1,000 waters. And the deep and dank tarn at my feet closed sullenly and silently over the fragments of the house of Usher.
Yep.
Narrated by.
Pretty fucking impressive, and
That was. You know what? It was worth the stream getting taken down because I'm glad you sent me that.
well,
I really am.
fuck them. But
I'll get around it. I have my ways. Don't worry about it.
okay.
All right.
But a very different telling of the same story,
Yes.
and equally fucking beautiful. I would say
the animation, gorgeous. The voice performance by the late Sir Christopher Lee. I rarely use this word. I don't think I've ever actually used this word on stream. Exquisite.
It is. Yeah. Well, I mean, wow. What else can be said but wow? I mean, it is that animation I had not seen until recently, and rewatching the film to prep for this. And to me, what is so amazing about a story like The Fall of the House of Usher is that there can be so many interpretations. By the way, this is not the only alternative to the 1960 film. There are about 5 or 6 different movies. Some of
Well, mhm.
yeah.
Go ahead. Well, and also Netflix is or has done a series, a limited series on it.
You know
So
who's in the series?
no, honestly, I don't.
Okay, guess who's playing? Well,
I have honestly no idea.
I'm about to blow your mind here.
Okay.
So another reason we're talking about this fucking story is about to become so relevant. It's about to be a hit on Netflix,
Mhm.
like you say. But I want to get the character right though here, so we can so I can properly um, uh, communicate my excitement. So,
Okay.
all right. So, the creator of the show. Okay,
Mhm.
we'll start there. Mike Flanagan.
Why does that name sound familiar?
That's the guy who did The Haunting of Hill House.
Oh,
Yes. So,
okay, okay, okay.
all right. So I'll give you a couple of cast names here, but there's one in particular that I think you're really gonna
Appreciate.
exactly. So
Mhm.
let's figure out what character he's playing here before I tell you.
Okay.
All right, this actor has 360 credits. That's pretty fucking impressive.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
All right, so no character listed, but this actor is going to appear in all 8 episodes. Mark
Okay.
Hamill. Mark Hamill is going to be a main character in the series. Interesting to see. I mean, who would he play? So very interesting. Perhaps
My
the Butler. I mean, that's where my mind goes.
that would be my guess. Would be the Butler
Yeah,
Bristol. Yeah.
yeah.
That
So
would be my strong educated guess would be Bristol, the Butler.
we also have Henry Thomas.
If I had to venture a guess, I think Henry's going to play Roderick. Maybe.
I don't think
That
so.
is,
No. So
well,
so what
he's.
happened with this is
Mm,
originally they had I want to say Alfred Molina as Usher, but he was fired, and they brought in
huh, that's a shame.
Bruce Greenwood. So
Ooh. Now
very so that worked.
he would make a pretty good Roderick.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
Bruce
would make it.
Greenwood.
Yeah, he would make a pretty good Roderick. I won't
Well,
lie.
the normies don't know Bruce Greenwood, but you and I have seen Bruce Greenwood films. We know who this
Yes.
guy is. He's
Yeah.
got what it takes for sure.
Well, if he could play JFK, I think he could play Roderick Usher. So, um, I do want to put a nice little bookend on this and everything for when I edit it and upload it later. I will say this because what I'm going to do, and I'll cut this particular part out. Um, I'm going to do the reaction to us watching it as its own separate video, and I'm going to I'll just have the stream, but this will be the bookend. Um, Watching the animated short in comparison to the live action film by Roger Corman, two, as you said, two very different tellings of the same story. But what I think, and you mentioned this, and I have to agree, I think what Sir Christopher Lee was able to bring was a sense of empathy and sympathy for Roderick, whereas Vincent Price's character, as you mentioned, and I do agree with this as well, right? But I do still hold that little bit of I think Roderick did. Was he power hungry or was he overpowering? Yes, he was. Was he a tortured soul? I do believe yes, he was also. But as we both have talked about throughout the course of the evening, Vincent Price has always was able to do was bring a layered and a performance full of subtlety and um, nuance and depth, and that's why one of the reasons I love Vincent Price. He
Yeah,
has been will always be one of my all time favorite actors, and I'm really glad that you recommended this film, Zach. One of the best.
Well, Haunted Palace is better, so that's got to be on the list at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I agree with you. I mean, Vincent Price is just, I mean, one of the all-time best actors out there.
Yes.
Modern day actors could really learn a lot from him.
Yes.
And some of the more successful actors, I think, employ a similar tact in what they're doing, because the less you give the audience, the more they interpret the performance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, guys like Chris Pratt. I don't know if you've ever seen the famous Chris Pratt three faces, right? He goes like this. So he's doing an interview, and and they say, he goes, "This is fear," and he goes, "This is love." Right. So it's all the same face, and this is um, revenge. Right. So it basically it boils down to, what does the audience gain, right? But with Vincent Price, he does more than Chris Pratt. Obviously, he puts
Yes.
a little mystery into it, and
Mm-hmm.
he puts a layered character, like you said. You know, he puts a layered character. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's why.
Even though this movie has problems, I mean, is it the best movie of all time? It's not.
No, it's
But
not.
but you've got a great little Vincent Price part in this fucking movie, and to me, that's the real draw to this film. Seeing it
Yes.
in color with him in the red costume, I mean, is
Mm-hmm.
really the most, to me, the most, and the white hair, by the way. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time we see him with the jet black hair, or, you know, maybe a little gray. The full white hair of Vincent Price with the red costume on, to me, is the most striking image of the film.
Yes. And that's why I included it in the thumbnail, obviously. You know, I hope people that were able to catch the stream before it was taken down, those will watch it once I re-upload it. If you've, like I said, if you've never seen House of Usher, but never read it, I highly encourage you. The link, like I said, will continue to be in the chat and everything after this is done. And I will also include down in the description. I will include the link to the short that Zach shared with us, which will be its own separate video, because that animated short, voiced by a icon.
Ailing icon. Yeah, well, that's how much he
Yeah.
cared about it. That's how much he cared about what this part was. I mean, this is a guy who was like 90 something, and fucking is like somewhat dying, and said, "Yeah, I care about this part." So, you
And
know, it's an opportunity that I cannot pass up. So, I mean, that just shows you how great the material is.
well, the writing, the screenplay for this, the script for this animated short was beautiful. One of the best written pieces of one of the best written screenplays for an animated short I have ever heard, and for it to be delivered by Sir Christopher Lee, and an alien, as you said, an alien Christopher Lee, but still he brought it.
Fuck yeah, he did. Yeah, and
He did.
by the way, you know, you can tell it's old Christopher Lee. Like when he was 85, he wasn't old. But when he was 90 something, he was kind of old. If that makes sense. Like, I
It
mean,
does.
the dude released him a metal album when he was
I
like
know.
in his 80s. So
Mm-hmm.
you can tell this is kind of like older Christopher Lee just by the sound of his voice. But even
Yes.
so, I mean, the delivery is perfect. The
Well,
delivery
that's
is perfect. I mean, the inflections on singular words is fucking outstanding. You know, where he would say like, filled me with grief. Just fucking tremendous. There would be little small details and inflections. He totally nailed it. Yeah.
well, and the other thing, if is that Vincent Price did the same thing with his performances because he, much like Sir Christopher Lee, had a very distinct voice, had a very distinct method by which he spoke. And you can tell that in Price's performances throughout his career. This is one that's a little more comedic, but I remember seeing a clip for this for The Invisible Man because I love that movie of the old Claude Rains black and white. Vincent Price took up the role as the Invisible Man. Granted, it was a different character, obviously, but he made an appearance in one of the old Abbott and Costello meets one of the Universal monsters, and Bud and Abbott are Bud and Lou are sitting in a boat, and they're like, "Well, thank goodness we got out of that mess." And he's like, "We're all alone now," and it's a voiceover, obviously, and it's Vincent Price. He's like, "Oh, I wouldn't say that, man. Introduce myself. I'm the Invisible Man." And it's purely humor, it's purely satire, but that's what Abbott and Costello were known for. But
well, he was a funny guy. I mean, he
could be.
He leaned into the typecasting. It's like when he was with Kermit the Frog, and Kermit's little teeth come out, and he bites Vincent Price on whatever that show was. But what show was that, by the way? I can't remember.
I think it was I think it might have been the Sesame Street or the Muppet Show.
One of the films.
No, I think it was just one of the series, one of the TV series.
All right, gotcha. Yeah, but he could lean into it. He could have a good time with it.
He could.
In fact, you talk about ending on a great note. I've sent you another link. In fact.
Oh Lord. You're really gonna get me in trouble.
Well, let's see if we can get taken down twice.
Well,
I'm mutts. YouTube.
Well, here's the thing. I'm off of YouTube. We're not broadcasting on YouTube, but we're still on Facebook and Twitter, like I said.
Yeah, well, so. I mean, listen. I mean, if YouTube had, just the passion I have. I mean, I would.
I have seen this.
Fuck them,
Zach. I have seen this, but I will still watch it. I have seen this, but I will still watch it because this is
fuck them. Fuck YouTube. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, I know. I understand. Okay,
what the fuck? I mean, are they for real? Are they for real? I mean, if I play listen, I did a video where I got like 25,000 views on the video. That's like $400 in my fucking pocket. And these $400. I mean, it's not great, but it's something.
Mm-hmm.
And these fucking motherfuckers took my little 5-second ad where I played what I thought was a non-copyright music, 5 seconds, and gave that money to some band that nobody's ever heard of. What the fuck are we doing?
Devo. Okay. I'm taking this down to normal because it's more appropriate this way. Because it's from an old TV show. It's from the Joan Rivers TV show. I've actually seen this before, and Johnny
Carson was sitting there fucking sharpening his knives.
It's Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
And it's full moon.
Yeah.
And to have you sitting here and not do your part on Thriller would be a sin, which you've never done on television.
Never done it.
No, I know. I beg you.
Well, all right, I will. All right. Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize y'all's neighborhood. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down, must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. The foulest stench is in the air, the funk of 40,000 years. And grizzled ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver, for no mere mortal can resist the evil of the Thriller.
I'd hate to follow that.
There's no way you
Well-
can.
We'll be right back with. Listen, man, I got to catch a cab.
It's not Halloween until you've watched the full video, the full music video. One of the best music videos ever done, ever. Directed by honestly, I think a terribly underrated director, John Landis, and by I think one of the greatest entertainers of all time, Michael Jackson. Truly, and to have that man do the voiceover for one part, just perfect. And that laugh, that absolutely iconic, bone chilling laugh. Gotta love Vincent Price, particularly.
Well,
around Halloween.
in some ways, he was singing, right? I consider him
Yeah.
to be a performer on that. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree. I would wholeheartedly agree. But folks, we're gonna go and wrap up here. I do want to thank Mr. Zacharias J. Usher, aka Mr. Zach Leary, for joining me tonight, for recommending this movie. This was his baby, and of course,
Well, it was the wrong baby.
no, it wasn't. There's no wrong baby. Was a great movie. This was a great discussion, even if it got taken down by a bunch of idiots by a freaking robot on YouTube. Up yours and up yours. From both this side of the pond and the other side of the pond,
Well,
YouTube.
hopefully, you'll be sitting there in your Palpatine style Emperor throne. And
well, technically, if you look at this without the top part, my recliner does resemble Palpatine's throne.
It totally does. And hopefully one day you'll be sitting there in your Palpatine throne and you'll be able to say, "Fuck you" to YouTube. So
yes,
we'll see.
That's. But I do want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. I do want to thank Zach for being here this evening. I do want to let you all know I will be back tomorrow evening at 8:30 Central Time, continuing our Halloween festivities. And tomorrow evening, and this is an open invite.
So my band,
you're not. I never said you were banned. I just I'm encouraging you to watch the original Dracula. That's all I'm doing.
So if I show up during the second half to talk about the fucking Bram Stoker's Dracula by Coppola, am I going to get my ass kicked out of the fucking stream?
The only time I've ever kicked somebody out of a stream is when they were acting like an ass, and that's been only maybe once in my entire time. So no, you're not going to get kicked out. I don't kick people out.
All right, you might see me over there. You might see me.
I'll use you. Here's what I'll do. I'll use you as the spokesperson or the expert for Coppola's Dracula. How about that?
Very good.
So, but I still encourage you to watch the original because it is a truly great piece of cinema. But anyway, folks, again, thank you all for being here tonight, whether you were with us or anything before we got taken down or after the fact. As I said, I will be uploading this, so kiss my ass, YouTube. And you all have a great night. Again, happy Halloween. Boo. We'll see you all tomorrow night. And until next time, stay ambassadorial. And these are the ambassadors. Signing off. Boo.